Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Parishscope. This is the newsletter, the extension of the newsletter, the podcast that it goes with the newsletter of the Parishscope from St. John, Sand Prairie. I'm Pastor Chris Sansom.
And I'm Casey Jeremus, the creative worship director at Our Savior Lutheran in Washington.
You know, this makes, because we met last week too, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
So this makes 2 weeks in a row.
2 weeks in a row.
2 weeks in a row.
That's pretty good.
We're on a roll.
This momentum, you can't stop this momentum now. It's going.
Like, I will say this, though. Like, first of all, daylight savings times hit.
Oh, yeah.
And I hate having it so dark so early.
Yeah, it is really dark.
I really missed the times whenever I was like driving out and it was still a little light out.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like completely dark.
Pitch
and
black.
now with deer season and everything, I saw 2 deer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I got plenty of time to slow down. I mean, you know, but still, nobody wants to see that.
Yeah, you're going on like the blacktop though, right? To like they call it like the Metamora, but it's the opposite direction, Morton blacktop, where you go all the way through like Broadway. You go down Broadway.
So I was doing that. I'm actually not anymore.
Yeah.
And the main reason for that was because every time I would drive out to your place and drive back, I'd always see deer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so I started going up through East Peoria.
Yeah, that's probably the safer.
Taking, 24 or whatever it's called?
Yeah.
And taking it over. But I saw deer on 24 this time.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
I know. It's like, man, can't escape them.
It actually really blows. I don't know. It blows my mind to think that there are these massive creatures that just run around and we just hit them with our cars and we're screwed and it just sucks. It's like no one ever wanted to take care of that problem.
I'm sorry, the way you said that is cracking me up.
They're huge.
You're just like, we're driving around, we're hitting with them cars. We're like I get this image of like us all out there like, okay, I'm going deer hunting with my Buick. Yeah. Like I'm going to hit them.
I mean, that's the best case scenario if you could like take one and get some meat out of it. But
yeah, I think they've done a lot to try to change it, but
yeah,
can't fix it all.
No,
can't fix it all.
No.
Well, you know, last time, so I was actually thinking about this today. Like, so last time we had a lot of fun just like looking at the election results as they were kind of coming in.
It was fun.
And obviously, you know, Trump won pretty significantly, I'd say. And so, you know, I was puzzling myself with that, and I was kind of wondering why. Now here's the thing. You can do this in a lot of ways. You could say, oh, it's because of this policy or that policy, or you can listen to some of these commentators that are like, oh, everybody's really upset. Now, I think some of those might be true. Some of those might not be true. But I will say this. I listened to a guy, and admittedly, I listened to him on TikTok. I'm sorry, everybody. I did. It was TikTok. So take this for what it's worth. But I didn't investigate a lot, but I think this was, to some degree, at least one part of the thing. And I wanted to kind of bring it up.
Sure.
Because one of the things that this guy was doing is he was looking at the county maps, and he was showing where Obama won back in the day, and then where Trump won. And, you know, obviously the major cities tend to go blue, and a lot of the rural areas tend to go red. Mm-hmm. And what this guy was showing was basically what Trump did is he won over a lot of the areas that Obama turned blue, he turned them back red. Mm-hmm. Not the major cities, again, you know, like Chicago was blue, although a lot of headway was made there in terms of like Trump and the like.
Yeah.
But here's the thing that I thought was really fascinating is, you know, one of the things that this guy brought up was the fact that Obama made a huge point of going to a lot of these places, a lot of these small towns, a lot of these small places, and like actually talking to the people. Mm-hmm. Now Kamala couldn't do that. Like she just didn't have time. I mean, and again, we can, you know, so what I'm saying is this is not necessarily a policy thing.
Yeah.
This is just a connection to people thing. Mm-hmm. Kamala didn't really have enough time to do it. Trump very obviously did it. He even went into the cities and places.
Yep.
He went into places where like no politician has been seen in a long time.
Yeah.
And he made his presence known. I think a lot of people, in a lot of ways, felt very connected with it. And I think, and this is the reason I bring it up. I bring it up because I think one of the things that it shows is it really does show the power of relationships.
Yeah.
And the power of like feeling connected to people in a general sphere. Because again, everything I'm talking about has nothing to do with policies, has nothing to do with Democrat or Republican. It just has everything to do with just going down and getting to know the people. Obama did it, and ultimately he won those elections twice. Trump did it and was known for that, and he won this time. Now again, Kamala didn't really have enough time to do that. I think that one thing, though, it does show us, in a lot of ways, is kind of in a way the power of, relationships as a whole. Mm-hmm. And I think Trump won in the realm of relationships.
Yeah.
Now again, that doesn't mean I'm thinking he's a great guy. And again, this particular discussion doesn't have anything to do with policies or economics.
Yeah.
Purely just, do you feel like he listens to you or not listens to you? Do you feel like she listens to you or doesn't listen to you? So on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's funny because I've heard some commentators say that this election was decided months ago, is like what they keep saying. But I really do think it's so interesting to see the fact that there are different media avenues. Like, I don't know if we probably talked a little bit about this, but like the Joe Rogan podcast is a massive platform, and more people listen to Joe Rogan than CNN or a lot of these different news outlets, because he'll just sit down with someone for 3 hours and they'll just talk, and there's no editing, like taking out chunks of it to make people sound smarter or whatever. It's just he just has a conversation with them, and it's like,
and I don't think it's a competition. I mean, what I'm saying is I don't think there's any competition.
No,
like Fox News on a good night will get 2.6 million.
Yeah.
Like, let's say CNN, NBC, CBS or whatever, those guys combined get like 3 million, or, at least, in recent polls that I've seen. Like Joe Rogan gets like 30.
Yeah.
It's like, again, it's like you put them all together and it's like, it's not even close.
Yeah.
Like Joe Rogan gets like 30 million listens.
Yeah. It's absolutely incredible. And it's just such a different media platform that it's not, we have to compact this story into a 4-minute segment. It's like, it's a 3-hour thing. And I watched part of it. I think I watched about 2 hours of it. And then I accidentally hit a button and I couldn't find my place. So I was like, oh, shoot. But I mean, I didn't watch the whole thing, but there's still something to the fact that you can just sit there and listen to someone talk normally. And that's one thing you talk about relationships. It's so different now because these podcasts and things like this, I mean, they went on, him and JD Vance and a lot of the people that are on their team went on a bunch of these different podcasts and just talked just normal.
And again, for what it's worth, Kamala did too. She went on a few of them. Yeah. Not Joe Rogan. I know there was some like to do about that, and I'm not going to get into that.
No.
But she did go on to a few of these podcasts to talk for at least a little while. I think she was limited a little bit by time, by about an hour. Now, again, keeping with the 8th commandment, remember the 8th commandment calls us never to bear false witness against our neighbor. Mm-hmm. And that means that we explain everything in the best, kindest way. So I know she was limited in a lot of these podcasts to about an hour. And I know we could sit here and talk about, oh, she's a terrible person. The reality is I think she was doing such a rushed campaign that she didn't want to spend too much time in any one place.
Yeah.
It made it really hard for her to feel relaxed, I think. Mm-hmm. And again, I could be wrong on that, but that's kind of my takeaway.
Yeah.
But one of the things I really thought was interesting about this, and this whole discussion, is it really does just show, again, the power and the necessity of relationships. So years ago, I went through and I was kind of reading some stuff on like the history of Christianity. Mm-hmm. One of the first quote unquote saints. And by the way, we talk about saints every now and again. Whenever I bring up a saint, I'm not talking about the fact that I'm not saying like, oh, we should worship this person. Like, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is like, you tend to try to mimic your role models. A saint is usually somebody who had a good life, who had a life of faith, and somebody who we should look towards and go, yeah, I should model my life at least somewhat like that.
Yeah.
Or, in certain areas. Now, you have different saints that lived in different time periods and so on and so forth. One of our first saints is named Saint Anthony, or Saint Anthony the Great. Saint Anthony the Great is one of the first persons to be credited anyway with like monastic living. He's the first monk.
Okay.
Now, he wasn't the first one, really.
Right.
He was the first one to gain any kind of prominence.
Oh, gotcha.
There were a lot of people that would actually venture off into the desert and so on and so forth and live life of isolation and reclusive lives and so on and so forth. But most of them, to be completely honest with you, many of them were crazy. And I don't mean that, and I'm not trying to belittle them. Like, I mean, I think they were like actually crazy.
Yeah.
Like, mental illness in 200 AD. It's kind of like that's what they would do. And a lot of them would die, or a lot of them would do things that, were just ridiculous, like sit on post for weeks, and so on and so forth. St. Anthony actually lived, and he lived in a way where he could study God's word and meditate on it and all that kind of stuff. A lot of people tried to follow in his footsteps and failed.
Yeah.
A lot of people tried to set up like their life like him, and they couldn't. And it wasn't until, over a century later, if not multiple centuries. I don't know when. I forget the date exactly of Saint Benedict, but Saint Benedict of Nursa comes along, and he writes something known as the Benedict's Rule, or his rule, and ultimately what it is it's a book of how to live not just as a monk per se, but in a community. And this is why really Saint Benedict in a lot of ways is truly the father of monasticism, because his rule basically created a way for these people to live together. And as it turns out, that is what made it workable. St. Anthony just going out and living in isolation, nobody could really do that.
Yeah.
I mean, very, very few people. And even St. Anthony had visitors on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But living in a community of people, you needed other people. You needed to have relationships. As human beings, we are created for relation. We're not created to be alone.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I think that's kind of where I'm going to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think we a lot of times think that we're okay to be alone, and we're really not.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want you to hear me wrong. I'm not saying that everybody has to go find a spouse.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. But find a way to be around people at least a little bit on a regular basis. And I think that's the way God created us to be.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we could go into the whole chemical things, like,
yeah. Well, I have kind of an interesting, just like going off of that, because I've shared before that I definitely family history wise, very large percentage of the men in my family have like chronic depression.
Yeah.
I definitely dealt with that quite a bit through middle school and high school. And high school, once that was up, I kind of had this, I had this moment of like sort of the, get off the couch sort of moment. Like, I got to do something with my life and stop having this whole thing. And I at that time I said, I just did everything by myself and I was really happy. And I just I joke that I would see people, I went to ICC, I would see people I was friends with that, would like wave at me in the lunchroom and kind of like make a motion like there's a seat here, and I would just wave at them and keep walking and go sit by myself and eat, and I was happy. But what I think what I realized as I've gotten older is that it wasn't so much that I was being in isolation, like I don't want to talk to anybody. It was that I was actually getting rid of relationships that really didn't, like, they weren't good relationships.
Sure.
And some of them, I like to say, they were good people, they weren't good friends.
Yeah.
So I think what happened is that I was doing that, but I was starting to I was making friends in my music courses, and I was starting to form friendships with people that were deeper bonds, and I actually was happy being around those people.
Yeah.
And so, again, at the time, I would have been like, oh, I just don't want to be around anybody. I'm so much happier not talking to anyone. But I think what I was doing, I was just kind of cleansing myself of those relationships that made me didn't make me happy.
Yeah.
And I was finding new ones without really understanding that's what I was doing. But
well, and again, there is something to be said. Like my one of the points that I'm making is by and large, most of us were not designed to be in isolation.
Yeah.
And I think by and large, whether you look at that scientifically, socially, psychologically, even spiritually, that's just a truth.
Yeah.
Same thing with like things like church, right? I know the idea that you can be at home and go to church sounds all nice and good, but the reality is that you really can't. Now, if you're sick one week or something, like, go ahead, by all means. But like, by and large, you should find yourself with a community of Christians, a community of believers that you can be with. There is something to be said about those relationships. But that being said, yes, there is something about unhealthy versus healthy relationships. Yeah. And there is such a thing as an unhealthy relationship. Now to some degree, again, if you want to go dig real deep into this, like from everything I've read from a psychological standpoint, we all inherently carry some amount of like unhealthiness with us, but it's all about grades, how much, and also, are you willing to work on it? And do you recognize it? Don't recognize it? And so you have all these different variables at play as you head into it. But again, that's a whole other topic. That's going to go into waters where like I'm not a professional. You know what I mean? I've read enough books to be dangerous, but I don't want to sit here and say, oh yeah, this is definitely how it is. Yeah. But some of it's very interesting. Some of it's very fascinating. But the big takeaway for me is, and again, this kind of goes back as I was looking at like the campaign and yada, yada. Yeah. It's just, I think there's a lot of people out there that maybe disagreed with Trump, but really felt like Trump actually listened to them. Yeah. And even though he wasn't necessarily going to do what they wanted, they were just happy to have somebody listen. Yeah.
Well, and I think that now, again, there's many people with different opinions, so there might be people who disagree.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But I think that's, I get into, all the conversations people have had this week that, when people say,
lots of them.
I can't believe anybody would vote for Trump or something. I always, my first thought is just that, I'm not saying he's a perfect person, but I do, in my personal opinion, I feel like I understand who he is more than I did the other candidate. Like, I really don't feel like I know. I feel like for me, there's a lot of kind of like a lot of smoke and mirrors that are kind of put up. And maybe part of that, like you said, that might be partly because the campaign was so quick.
Yeah,
for her.
It was so rushed.
But there is something about at least knowing who someone is and feeling like, well, I may not like every part of them, but I do know them. There is a feeling of that. And if you don't know someone, it's like, well, I'm voting for someone I don't actually really know what I'm voting for. And so, but again, there's many different opinions.
And again, I don't want this to boil down into like policy because the reality,
it's not even policy to me.
Because the reality is that Obama did really good with this as well. In fact, to some degree, I would actually argue that Obama was actually better at it than Trump.
Probably, yeah.
Obama was so polished. Again, we can go and talk about policy. I didn't vote for Obama. I did not agree with some of his policies, but I will gladly say that he was such a good conversationalist. He very much had a good way of connecting with people, making people feel like he connected with them. He was just out there and doing stuff, and he did the ground game. He was excellent at all of those things.
Yeah.
Which is why I think he won.
Yep, I think so.
And again, same thing with like the whole Trump fanatic stuff. Again, maybe Kamala still has that gift, but she wasn't able to really, in my experience, or from what I saw,
Yeah.
she wasn't necessarily given enough time to develop that.
Yeah.
Whereas
sure.
Trump really did.
Yeah, and he's been in the public eye for
A long
time. So he's had that sort of...
And that worked in his favor, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that was like, I was thinking about like, what was I going to do for a news story? Because obviously everybody's talking about this right now.
Yeah.
But again, I also didn't want to boil it down to like Republican versus Democrat. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
I feel like we've had enough time to talk about that. And I didn't want to talk about that per se. Instead, I wanted to focus on the idea of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think for what it's worth, I think relationships are incredibly important. And I also think church relationships are incredibly important.
Yes.
Yeah. Again, don't go to church in isolation.
Yeah.
Come join some fellow people.
Yeah.
People.
That's been kind of a discussion about, as we've been searching for a pastor, we've had a few now we have some families who they do sports, and there's a lot of weekends where they're out doing sports and they just can't make it on Sunday morning. Like they're traveling that morning or something. And we've had, a few pastors that they've talked to who say like, I don't want to do live streaming.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I totally get, like, you're like this point you're talking, and I totally get that 100%. But that, I mean, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that because it's hard because yes, you want them there in person, not just for the offering, but also for just interacting with people and being a part of the church, because so I worked as a road rep for a little over 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the biggest thing is if you're not there, if you're not creating a relationship with people, they're just going to go buy somewhere else, know? And it hands down every time I'd have somebody say, I really don't need you to stop by every week. Like just come when I need something. And, that's their wishes. They don't want me to come by. Okay. 9 times out of 10 within about a year, they were going with another company.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even that the other company was there before I was there. It was that they didn't have a relationship with me. Someone else showed up and say, "Hey, would you ever work with me?" And they go, "Yeah, sure." And it's like, well, you told me not to come. But that's the truth though, is just that relationship. There's a big difference. You want to feel like you're working with someone you want to go to church with people and if you don't go, a live stream's great, but
well, I look at live stream the same way I kind of look at like Facebook.
Yeah.
Or like Facebook evangelism, like look, if you're one of those people that gets on Facebook every day or Instagram or whatever it happens to be, and you post, like a psalm of the day or a verse of the day here and a verse of the day, like, hey, look, more power to you. That's awesome. I think that's wonderful. You keep on going. But if you think that by posting that, you are like evangelizing to the heathen masses, you're fooling yourself.
Yeah.
Like imagine going in the other direction. Imagine somebody put a quote for the Quran out and you read it every day. At what point would you read like the third verse from the Quran? Would you go, "Oh my gosh, I've been doing this wrong my whole time. I'm gonna be a Muslim now." Like no, that's not the way that really works. So that's really, not good. You can't just like evangelize like that. But let's say somebody and you have a good relationship with that person, but you live 2 states away.
Yeah.
And you can connect with that person a little bit. You can see some of the pictures, from their outings, and maybe you call them every now and again or whatever. Like, okay, so now Facebook is actually a help.
Yes.
But it's a help to maintain a relationship that's already there.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not helping you to start a new relationship. It's not even really helping you to deepen your relationship. It's simply there to help you maintain your relationship.
Yeah.
That's the way I kind of view live stream.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you have a good relationship with like your church home, and the people and so on and so forth, like, hey, if you miss because of something and you have to do a live stream, like, that's okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's, I mean, again, thinking about the sporting realm, like, imagine you're the first baseman for a baseball team, and you want to live stream their game.
Yeah.
Like, you're not there. Now, maybe you're sick and you just can't be there. Okay, we get it.
Mm-hmm.
We're happy to have you at least watch the game. You care about the game. You want to be able to talk later to your teammates and say, man, Jacob, you made an awesome play, or whatever it happens to be. Like, you want to still feel like you're a part of the conversation. It's going to help you maintain that relationship. But if you miss every game and you only watch the video feed of it,
yeah,
eventually, that's not helping you maintain that relationship anymore. Now the relationship is probably going to start going downhill.
Yeah.
The longer you stay away and the longer you do that, the more that relationship, I think, will start to slowly, detach and slowly drift apart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I think by and large, that's kind of the way I tend to view live stream.
No, I think that's a great point, because that's a good way to put it, because there's members who they can't make it to church because of physical issues or just where they're at, and it's, like I said, great to maintain it, but it's really hard to just build this amazing relationship with your church family and with God through live streaming.
Absolutely. But, and I mean, even for a lot of the, like, so we do have members that, for instance, they're shut in, they can't quite make it to church. Maybe they have something, physically that impairs them. Like, this is one of the things that Bill and I do. We go around and we visit these people.
Yeah, you do.
Like, right? That relationship isn't just maintained, it's actually continued and sustained.
Yes.
Even through interaction.
Mm-hmm.
So they can watch the live stream if they're, well enough to, do that. Some of these guys don't even know how to use a phone, like a smartphone. So some of them still can't do that, but at least we have that connection.
Mm-hmm.
But even that's a real life connection.
Yeah.
We bring communion. If they're in the hospital, we'll go visit them in the hospital. That's different than somebody who just stays away from church and just watches a live stream.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say, I think that's one thing when we first started doing the podcast that was interesting, because there were a lot of people who are kind of like, this is really nice. We get to kind of hear you, like, especially me, because I don't really talk.
Yeah.
I'd never really talked. So it was the first time some of them really ever heard me say much. Yeah. And then with you, I mean, we're still a focus on, God and like the Lutheran, like seeing things through the Lutheran lens sort of thing. But it is interesting to just kind of get to hear someone talk about, like, what's your favorite candy? Because there's sort of a connection of knowing something and having that relationship. So that's why.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. So, yeah. So by and large, that was my story for today. Like, relationships are important.
And I think, just to kind of piggyback off of that, I think it's very true. And one of the things I thought that was interesting about this past week with the campaign is I saw a lot of posts angry about the results.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always amazing to me, because when people start, some of them, we're just like, oh, this really makes me sad, or what, okay. Some of them were like, they go very much on the attack of like, all you idiots who did, and as soon as that starts, I think you're not writing this for any sort of teachable moment or showing people how you feel. Because as soon as you go on the attack, if you're talking about relationships, you've just demonized a whole group of people.
Oh yeah.
And obviously there's a lot of people who voted that a certain way. So it's interesting, because when people go that direction, which isn't everybody, but when people start going that direction, I think, who are you writing this for? Because you're not writing it to reach to people who disagree with you.
Yeah.
And by just getting more angry and calling people names or telling people they're dumb and all these things, you're not doing any, it's kind of like you said that, what'd you call it? Evangelizing. I can't remember. But it's like
evangelism to the heathens.
Yeah. Evangelism to the heathens. The only people liking those posts are the people who agree with you already.
Yeah.
They're not, and the people who disagree with you are more fired up now because you're calling them idiots. And it's like, well, they want to defend themselves because, you're not being nice to them. So it's just interesting. I that's one thing I've noticed this past week is seeing, and the first couple days after the results, pretty intense. It's died out quite a lot now.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see because I always think when I'm writing something, especially on social media, since I do a lot of that, is I got to be really have to think about who I'm writing to. And I never ever want to insult a group of people because as soon as you do that, you've turned people off.
Yeah.
So if you really want to reach out to people, you got to,
Oh man. See, and the thing is like, the way social media is now with hate and with all the trolls and everything that are out there, it's made me to the point where I almost don't want to write anything on Facebook anymore or any of the platforms anymore, just because of that. But yet then I can think back to the early days. I can think back to MySpace.
Yes.
And the groups and the arguments and fights we used to all get in. Oh man. I used to belong to these like theology and doctrine groups, and man, we would just argue.
Yeah.
Just argue. And it wasn't like today because, even back then it was like we were still all figuring out this whole social media platform kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so like even with these theology debates and like some of them got pretty vicious, but yet at the same time it was like we weren't quite to the level of troll. Like people weren't just doing stuff to make other people mad, at least in the groups I belong to. Of course that was MySpace. Like Facebook changed everything.
MySpace was a different time.
Dude.
It was a beautiful place. It's so funny because we've had students, Taylor and I both have had students who said, it'd be really cool if there was like a social media platform where you could like customize your page to look however you want. And then like you could put like music on it or something. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that was MySpace. That's exactly what it was.
But wouldn't it be cool if you could, just have your top 5 friends?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. You have to rank them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you had your top 5.
That's right.
And then you had Tom. Don't forget about Tom.
Don't forget Tom.
I
wonder where Tom's at right now.
Yeah,
I wonder if he has a Facebook page or not. That'd be interesting.
I hope he does. I hope Tom has a Facebook page.
Tonight I'm gonna look up what happened to Tom.
Yeah, that's right. As well you should.
I should.
As well you should. The man that never ages.
Yeah.
He's always got that smirk on his face as he's looking at
shirt.
you. Yeah, same white shirt.
It is, it's okay. This is interesting. Now, I know I go off on random tangents, but this has really been on my mind because my wife and I have been watching, of course, the show Survivor. And Survivor is a great kind of representation of society in a lot of ways because they take all these people from different walks of life, put them on an island, and they have to they kind of make their own little society. Yeah. And so it's really interesting to see how things play out. And, sometimes, I don't know. It's just strange. So what's weird is maybe 2-3 seasons ago, there was kind of this, I don't know what you call it, but it's kind of the pinnacle of this gameplay where people would blindside each other. They call it blindside where, everybody voted for someone out who wasn't expecting to get voted out.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So they think everybody's going on this plan. They get voted out. And a few years ago, there was a couple seasons in a row where someone would get voted out and they would their reaction was always like, oh my gosh, you guys got me. Oh man. And they were laughing, they were smiling, and they're like, man, this is amazing. I can't believe you guys got me. I didn't have any idea. And they would stand up, they'd get their torch, they'd get it snuffed.
Yeah.
And the whole time they're like just laughing and like, all right, I love you guys. See, have a good rest of the game.
Yeah.
And they would leave. This season we've been watching, every person who has gotten voted out is so angry and they are enraged. And I mean, you can see their faces. They are like one of them, I thought they weren't going to leave. They looked like they were not going to stand up. And it was like they were voted out and they're so mad. and then they're going, who did this, and they're like yelling at everybody, and it's been every person who's been voted out. It's so weird because I feel like a few seasons ago everybody was just having the time of their life. They were having so much fun. I don't know if that's because it was like after COVID, and maybe there's like some weird retrospective, people were just happy to go do this.
Yeah.
But it's so strange that all of a sudden, we went from this place of everybody's just having a great time, and it sucks I got out, but good job guys, that was good on you. I would have done the same thing. And now it's so much anger. It's so weird.
Yeah.
I don't know if that has anything to do with what we're talking about, but I felt like it did when I started it. But it's just weird how, like, I don't know.
Well, that's an interesting note. Like, the mood of things and so on and so forth.
Yeah. It's so interesting because those seasons where they were so happy, they were mad that they got voted out, but they were, it's like, they're disappointed, but they're also like, I love all you people.
Yeah.
Even though they voted them out. And so I wish that we could get to a place where, like I wanted someone to win. They didn't win, but I'm not enraged by all you people. And I know there's some topics people think of course, there's topics that are very serious, but, that level of getting to that place of like, even though we disagree or something didn't go the way we wanted it, we still maintain like, our relationships and being happy and for enjoying each other, even if we don't agree on everything.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to find a way to tie that in. I don't know if that worked.
Well, I always say though, like to a degree, and we've talked about this in the past and all that, but there is something to be said about being able to hold a conversation or be in the presence with somebody that you disagree with.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and to be civilized about it.
Yeah.
And to not be a jerk about it. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not, look, everybody has off days.
Sure.
Everybody has that time when they're like, maybe when they think back on it later, they go, man, I was kind of a jerk. But like by and large, like we're talking about some form of consistency. Like what do you consistently do? Can you have, generally speaking, a conversation with somebody that you really disagree with and still be kind of civilized about it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think to some degree that does actually apply, right? Because one of the things that I think you're seeing, and I'm sure it varies from one season to the next. I don't watch the show, so I really don't know. I've seen an episode here, an episode there. I'm not going to act like I've never seen an episode. I know how it goes. But like, I think some people maybe get too seriously into the game. And again, maybe it's like they get money and stuff, right?
Yeah. I mean, you go, the farther and there's certain, they want to get to certain points, it's like they want to make the merge, they want to make the jury, these different things. So they get upset if they don't make one of those that they really wanted to.
And I can understand that disappointment. Some people are getting really serious in the game. Some people are just happy to be playing. And obviously when we look at that from the outside and you're comparing different seasons, we want to be the person that can maybe just be happy to be playing the game. Be thankful, right?
Yeah. And there, that's what, it's just so interesting. And I think it does come down though to relationships, because those seasons, those people you can tell really liked each other.
Yeah.
They really had a great time. And even when they were at their tribal councils where they all discuss, what's been happening this week, they always said like, I love these people, hopefully it's not me tonight, but maybe people are lying to me, but I genuinely really love all these people.
Yeah.
And they all really did. You could tell they really liked each other and they all had a great time. But this season, you could tell people are more like, that person's really annoying me, and this person's like ticking me off, and this person, and I don't even know if they're really doing anything that different. It just seems like they just aren't connecting with people as much as they were before. So I don't know. Interesting.
Now that I will say this, that is not a way I've watched Survivor.
Yeah.
Again, I've only seen an episode here, an episode there, but I guess I've never looked at it from that perspective. Having watched multiple seasons, I have not watched multiple seasons. So
yeah, it's a very interesting show. My wife and I joke about how, you can relate every real life situation to Survivor in some way, because it's all, it's a lot of it's kind of like this compact little teaching, like society, like I said. And so to watch it play out and you kind of learn, it's like sometimes you're like at work and there's somebody talking to you and you're like, I don't think I could trust that person. I think, and it's a little bit like this Survivor. Like, I think they're lying to me. I think they'd vote me out if I was, and sometimes you're kind of right. You start seeing these signs, like in the show, you see people lying to people, and you kind of start noticing the things they say, or, and sometimes you kind of pick up on some of those subtleties. It's just, I don't know. It's very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. Yeah, no, that's a new one on me. I just don't watch the show. So
yeah, I'll get you hooked.
I don't know about that.
I don't know. About that,
we'll see about that. Isn't there like 20 seasons or something?
Oh, I mean, they're on 47 or 8 right now, I think.
Well, okay, so I was around whenever Survivor first came out. So yeah, obviously they're doing like 2 or 3 a year.
They do 2 a year, yeah. So they had their 40th a couple of years ago, and so that was this 20th anniversary, or the 20th year. But
yeah, I was gonna say, I think I was in high school when it came out.
Yeah, I feel
like I was a junior or a senior or something like that. Yeah. I don't know.
I remember when it came out because we watched the first couple seasons. My family did.
Yeah,
but it's one of those. I mean, if you haven't watched it recently, it's totally different. The same basic concept, but a lot of changes to it and how they film it and how they edit. It's just pretty incredible.
Well, see, I'll be honest. I remember when it was gonna come out, and like the announcement came out, and everybody was like talking about it. I remember going to high school and having some of my friends talk about it. They're like, "Yeah, they just put these people on this island. They gotta survive." Yeah. And I was like, "Oh, that sounds kind of cool."
Yeah.
I was thinking like Bear Grylls. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Survivor guy. Like these guys are gonna be dropped off. And then they're going to be like, we'll come back in a week and see if you're still alive. And I was like, as a teenage boy, I was like, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
And then I saw what it was, and like they were voting people off, and I was like, yeah, this is stupid.
It's so,
I'm like, this is not Bear Grylls.
Yeah. It's so interesting because the very first season, the guy who won was the villain of the show. Like he wouldn't, like they would all be picking up firewood and like doing stuff to try to, and he would just be sitting there and they'd be like, you want to help me? He'd be like, nah, I'm good. And so the whole season they're like, well, that guy, he's not going to win. And then they got to the end and it's up to the people who got voted out, and they voted him to win. And the guy who hosts the show, he was like, he said that they didn't know how that was going to go because it's their first season.
Yeah.
They looked at the votes and they go, the bad guy won?
Yeah.
How does that even make sense? Why would they vote for him? And it just became like, oh, sorry. It's so interesting because the players determine the show.
Yeah.
They didn't tell them, okay, the nicest person at the end wins. It was like, you decide who wins. And they decided that the guy who was the most manipulative and the most like kind of evil, that he won. And that really set the tone for the show, that you can be deceptive and all these things. Now there are seasons where someone was a super nice person and they won, based on that. But it changed. I mean, it's very interesting to see how they,
Still not Bear Grylls. Sorry.
No. No, it's very different. But it's just, it's interesting. So I guess we should probably move on. This isn't really a Survivor podcast. Sorry.
Yeah. No.
Got off on a tangent. I just have noticed that recently that for some reason people are really angry this season. And it's so strange because they've been moving in such a positive way the last few seasons. So I don't know what happened.
It's very interesting that you're picking up on these things. Like, like again, I just don't watch a lot of reality TV, so I can't really add a whole lot to the conversation other than just to say, yeah, okay.
All right, what's next then? What we got?
I don't know.
Now, okay, I have a question for you.
Yeah, what's up?
Because I don't know if we've talked about this last year or not. We kind of jumped into Advent and everything.
Yeah.
So maybe we talked about this last year. But as far as picking sermons,
yeah,
Advent is a little different, right? As far as what you can preach on and everything.
In what way?
Then maybe I'm wrong. See, I don't know. Because here's my understanding, and maybe I'm wrong, but you are sort of required, I think, or encouraged to preach on one of the readings for the week. Am I wrong by that?
Yeah, usually.
That's right. Okay.
Yes.
So when Advent comes around, are there readings set up for Advent that you have to base it on, or is that something you can just kind of do whatever you want?
Okay, so what you're getting into is something known as the lectionary.
Yes.
So most, I will say, most historical bodies, most historical Christian churches follow a type of lectionary system. Now, I say most. That doesn't mean all. There's exceptions to every rule.
Right.
But by and large, we do. Now, there are, in essence, in this case, two lectionaries that people use or that churches use. One is the more historical, more traditional, and it's called, well, the 1 year lectionary.
Oh, okay.
The 1 year lectionary has been used forever. Like in all honesty, some of our ancient manuscripts, of biblical text are actually lectionaries. We actually have dug up like parts and pieces and pages of lectionaries. So these were done for a long, long time, and the 1 year historic lectionary is actually quite old. And in fact, it's actually one of the fun things is like, so I think it was a couple years ago. We actually went through the 1 year lectionary.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that was very nice about it was the fact that, like, basically I can now access all the sermons from church history and they line up. So, like, I can go find a sermon by John Chrysostom, and it will be the same text, or I can usually find on the same text. I can find sermons from Luther, or Luther's Church Postal, as it's sometimes called, which is basically a kind of like a sermon notes book.
Yeah.
Kind of hard to explain, but yeah. So that's the benefit of the 1 year lectionary. Now, somewhere in the early 1900s, they came out with another one. This one is, at least nowadays, it's called the Common Lectionary, or the one we usually use is the Revised Common Lectionary.
Okay.
I just yawned. Anyway, apparently it's getting past my bedtime. But anyway, for the Revised Common Lectionary, one of the differences is that it actually splits it up and goes into 3 years. So you got series A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Each of the series have different gospel readings. They follow one of the three synoptics.
Mm-hmm.
So series A follows Matthew, series B follows Mark, series C follows Luke. The Gospel of John is kind of scattered throughout, the lectionary.
Yeah.
And then they'll choose epistle lessons and Old Testament lessons based on what the gospel lesson is. And so all of these lessons are organized based on the church season and the church year. Now, by and large, the whole idea behind a lectionary is that each year you go through the entirety of the life of Christ.
Yes.
And so with that in mind, Advent actually is the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
It is actually the beginning of the church year. So I know everybody else starts the year January 1st. In the Christian church, it's Advent 1.
Yeah.
So when we get to the first Sunday in Advent, it's okay. It's the beginning of the year. Now, in the 1 year lectionary, and I believe in at least two of the three RCL, Revised Common Lectionaries, basically the very first lesson is what is it? I think it's Jesus riding into Jerusalem. And the whole point is that the whole point of Advent is that Jesus is coming.
Yeah.
Jesus is coming. And then like the next week is like John the Baptist saying, make straight the path, Jesus is coming. So again, this whole move of Advent is all about the fact that Jesus is coming.
Okay.
And then Christmas, we celebrate his birth.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden with Epiphany, we talk about how Jesus reveals himself as God.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times Epiphany is the miracles that Jesus does. And of course, this ends with Transfiguration, which is the ultimate in terms of revealing. Again, if you look at it just in terms of miracle, you'd go, okay, I mean, that's pretty awesome that Jesus was transfigured before the disciples, but like, that's not really the biggest miracle. But when you look at it like, no, the whole idea of Epiphany is that Christ is being revealed for who he is, then you go, oh, Transfiguration makes sense. That's definitely Jesus revealing who he is, saying, I am God. And so that's kind of that. Then you got, of course, you head into, Ash Wednesday and Lent. So it's like you have all this stuff, and then all of a sudden you just slow down. You go, okay, now we're going to talk about Jesus in terms of his suffering, his death, his path to the cross. We're going to slow down and focus in on the path to the cross. You have Easter. You have the Ascension. And then all of a sudden after that, you get into Pentecost. And Pentecost really is all about the church. And so what it does is, from a calendar standpoint, it focuses on two things. First of all, it focuses on the ministry of Jesus, his teachings.
Yes.
Because it's talking about the church, and the church needs Jesus' teachings because we are followers of Christ. So basically, we've gone through from Advent all the way through Easter and Ascension. We have gone through the entirety of the life of Christ. And now we turn around and we say, okay, what are the things that Christ taught us?
Oh, gosh.
And so the whole of Pentecost is, and this is the longest season. Like, we're still in Pentecost. Pentecost started in May. We're still in Pentecost.
Yeah.
Right? It's been going on for a while. It is the longest season, but it is the season that focuses on the teachings of Christ, and it usually includes us going through, step by step, a gospel. Now, in this case, we're in Series B, so it's the Gospel of Mark.
Yeah.
So we're on Gospel of Mark chapter 13, I believe, this coming Sunday.
Now, so you go by, I should say, because we do it too, by a 3-year study. So it's Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Which one so there's a different one each year? Yeah.
So again, we follow what's known as the synoptics. Have you ever heard that before?
Yeah. But
okay.
I've heard the name, but I'm not super
sure. So there are 3 gospels that are very, very close from a contextual standpoint in terms of the materials that they have. Okay.
Which one is left out?
So Matthew, Mark, and Luke.
Okay.
Like there's stories in the Gospel of Mark that appear in both Matthew and Luke.
Gotcha.
And then there's stories that appear in Matthew that appear in Luke, but not in Mark. And then there's stories that appear in Luke that are in Mark, but not in Matthew, so on and so forth. And these are called the synoptic gospels because they tend to go almost like in lockstep with each other. Sin means like together.
Gotcha.
So synoptics. These are the 3 gospels that are together. After that, you have the Gospel of John, which a lot of times is shown almost like in the image of an eagle. It's like a bird's eye view. John. So you have Mark. Most people think that Mark was written first, and Mark is just giving you a brief overview of the ministry of Christ. Now we can go into it in a lot more depth at some point, but but just in basic, this is what it is.
Yeah,
a short, easy to understand text about the life of Christ. Matthew kind of gives you a lot more detail. Matthew's audience is Jews, and you can tell that because he quotes the Old Testament nonstop. And so, like, basically, if in his earthly ministry Jesus quotes the Old Testament, Matthew is more than likely going to put it in there, at least from what we know.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Luke is talking to a bunch of Gentiles. Luke is giving Jesus' ministry to the Gentiles. And so you see a lot more of the stuff that's geared towards Gentiles. More miracles that deal with healing.
Okay.
You know, you can see this with the genealogy, by the way. Mark has no genealogy in it. Matthew has a genealogy. Luke has a genealogy. Matthew's genealogy starts with King David. Luke's genealogy goes back to Adam and Eve. And so again, you know, to a Gentile, who's David and who cares? Like, but yet to a Jew of that time, like King David was it.
Interesting. Okay. So when you're now, so
actually, I think anyways, I think it was back to Abraham. I misspoke, but whatever. But anyway, yeah.
So when you're doing Wednesday night Advent services, do you have text you pull for that? Are you like a certain text that you were given to pull from? Or
okay, now Wednesday nights are a different beast.
Okay,
if you will. And so let me explain this. So in how to say this, a long time ago. I sound like I'm going to start a movie.
Yeah,
a long distant land. A long time ago, it was customary that during Advent, your midday service or midweek services would be focused on catechesis, the catechism, or your major doctrines or theologies and so on and so forth. So your Sunday was over the gospel and the readings. Your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because most of them actually had service almost every day. All those were on catechesis.
Okay.
Now, in modern days, what we've done is we don't necessarily do catechesis per se, but what we do is we try to take one aspect of something and we try to look really, really closely at it.
Oh, okay.
And so we end up with a sermon series that has a theme. Mm-hmm. Now, you can actually buy these sermon series, or you can craft them on your own. I've done both.
Yeah.
So honestly, this year we purchased one from CPH, Concordia Publishing House, and they come out with a new one every year. And we purchased it. Now, it will come with full sermons, but here's the thing. I never use them.
Yeah.
I never use them. I made that mistake early on in my ministry. My homiletics, so the preaching, homiletics and preaching. My homiletics professor wrote a sermon series.
Yeah.
And I got so excited. I was like, this is awesome. And so I literally verbatim memorized his sermon.
Yeah.
And basically, whenever I got done, I talked to people and they were like, well, it's a good sermon. Wasn't your style though? Something was off about it. And it, like, and that stuck with me. It really stuck with me. I've never done it again.
Yeah.
I have always, sometimes I'll even abandon the point that the guy's making in his sermon. I'll be like, mine's better. So it's like, I don't ever like just read somebody else's sermon.
Yeah.
I always do it myself. I always redo them all and make them my own.
Yeah. Because there's a relationship between you and the people.
And when
you're not being you.
Now that's very true.
It sounds it's off.
That's a great tie-in. I know you're.
I'm kind of but at the same time, I think it is kind of true. I think.
Well, and absolutely, but I mean, it's just so true. Like, but yeah, no, I will never. Never again. I'll take an idea. I'll take a concept or something like that. That's fine.
Yeah.
I might even take the structure, but the words are all mine.
Right. Yeah. I can. Yeah. I think there's something to that though. Even though jokingly kind of bring it full circle, but at the same time, Now I've also written several
that I've just done on my own. One we did is called "The Sound of Silence." And that was a Lent. That was my buddies and I got together and did that one.
Yeah, did you do that one last year or was
no? It's been several years. Okay. I did do it at Sam Prairie though.
Did you do one? What was last year? Did you do one that you wrote or was
that The Cursed? I think it
was The Cursed. Yeah.
The Cursed one. The Cursed one's probably the most well known one that I've ever written. A buddy of mine, a buddy and I worked on that one, and it was one of those things where like it was his idea, wholeheartedly his idea.
Yeah.
Shout out to you, Joel Brandt. Anyway,
Joel
Joel Brandt, that was his name. He's awesome. He is awesome still. He's up in Wisconsin. But his idea, and when he gave it to me, he had like a basic idea. The idea being that Jesus takes up the curses laid out in the Old Testament in Genesis 3. And there was like a couple bullet points for each of the curses.
No.
And I was like, okay. And so I was like, all right. And so I ran with that.
Yeah.
I ended up making a special trip from Wisconsin all the way down to Concordia Seminary in St. Louis so I could just go through their library for like 2 days. And
Wow.
I did. I like just buried myself in their library. I think I ended up writing something like I wrote like 25 pages of text plus I want to say 7 or 8 sermons.
Yeah.
And I wrote it all. And
Yeah.
I just and it was just phenomenal. I had so much fun doing it. I mean, it was like, it was a long time coming, but it was like I worked really hard on that one.
Yeah.
And to the point where there was a lot of people that I like later online like actually asked for it, and
Wow.
like I never like charged or anything. I gave it away for free.
Yeah.
But like it was like, yeah, here, use this.
For a pastor,
Yeah.
is that sort of the equivalent of like making an album for a musician? It's like you.
I don't know what making an album is like, so I'm gonna say
yeah.
maybe.
I mean, okay.
Maybe.
Okay. But I mean, it feels pretty cool to have. I mean, not that. Of course, that's not why you're doing it, but
Yeah.
it feels. I'm sure there's got to be cool to have someone be like, hey, can I check out that series you wrote?
And there was another one that I actually wrote, and I started it when I was in seminary. Again, one of my buddies and I worked on it because we did. Him and I both did like a kind of a paper project on this like what was it? It was the Stations of the Cross, which a lot of people know the Stations of the Cross, but we studied and tracked the history of it all the way back to like North Africa. And like we found that like a lot of times what they would do, like we're talking 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, whatever it was, is they would actually mobilize. They would move, like the people would move, and they'd go from one station to another station. And it wasn't like in the church per se. It was actually they were very mobile.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that him and I did is we talked about that, and we said, you really can't do that nowadays.
Yeah.
But then we said, but that doesn't mean the pastor can't be mobile. And so it was actually one of the first series I ever did here. And basically, I would start the sermon in different places throughout the church.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, that one was a little bit before your time. But, yeah, I started in, like, the sacristy once. I started actually, like, sitting next to somebody once. Like, just I was just everywhere. You know?
That's interesting.
And so we decided that instead of trying to mobilize the church, we would just mobilize the pastor.
That's a cool idea, though.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other sermons? How many have you written?
Oh, I don't. I mean, I have them all, but I have not tracked that.
You don't know? I should say, how many series do you like as far as an Advent series?
Oh,
do you know?
I don't. I really don't.
Yeah.
I just kind of labeled off the main 3.
Yeah.
Those are kind of the big ones I've spent the most time on. Sound of Silence, I spent a good deal of time on. Cursed, I spent a good deal of time on. That other one I did while in seminary, but honestly, I didn't perfect it. I shouldn't say perfect, but I didn't like fix it, I guess I'd say, until I was, a pastor.
Interesting. Interesting. This is a whole new thing. I like the rock stars of like Lutheran pastors. It's like, oh, have you seen their Advent series? Yeah, I think that's interesting. But
anyway, no, it was a lot of fun. I actually love doing that because that's like, everybody has like their thing that they really get into, and that's always been mine. Is like got to be like the exegetical work. I love digging into the text. I really have an enjoyable time doing that. So yeah.
All right. Well, I think it's time.
Is it time?
Yeah.
Church chatter. All right. Well, we had our big Harvest Fest this past Saturday, and it rained.
Yeah.
And it rained. And it rained.
Oh.
So sad. No bonfire.
No bonfire?
No bonfire.
Oh, no. What are you going to do with all that?
Well, we had to, we're going to have to burn it some other time. We ended up in the basement, which, look, we had a good time. The brisket was fantastic. We had a good time, but no doubt, not as fun as it could have been. We'll have to have another time where we just burn it or something.
Yeah.
I don't even know, but yeah, little bummed out with the rain, but you know what? You never know. You never know.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll adjust it, tweak it. Maybe next year we'll do something. So it'll be fun. In terms of what's coming up, honestly, you hit the nail on the head. Basically, we got Thanksgiving Eve here in a few weeks, couple weeks. And then after that, it's a downhill progress. I do mean downhill. It's like you just keeps going faster and faster and faster.
Yeah.
Because Advent starts December 1st. First Wednesday in Advent is December 4th. And it's boom, boom, boom. And then we're heading on our way to Christmas Eve.
Mm-hmm.
So just so you know, the Advent services, all of our midweek services are going to be at 5:30 again.
5:30.
And then when we get to Christmas Eve, it's going to be 4:30, 7, and 11. Now, I'm going to say that about 30 million more times, but just so we get it out there now, those are our times.
Yes.
And then 10 a.m. on Christmas morning.
That's right.
And by the way, don't skip Christmas morning. And I mean, I get it.
What is this? This is about family, Chris, not about church.
Yeah, right.
Just kidding.
Yeah, and I mean, again, just for anybody that pays attention, anybody that's listening, try it. Try it. Just go to Christmas Day service.
Try it.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, look, we get a goodly number of people for Christmas Day. It's always a great time. I love Christmas Day service. To be really honest, after Christmas Eve, Christmas Day really is one of my favorite services. It's just something so calming about it. There really is. It's the morning, but it's at 10 a.m., so it's not rushed.
Yeah.
You're just kind of relaxing. You're kind of there.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful service. I actually really love Christmas Day service. I really, really do.
Yeah.
But I always tell people, look, Christmas Eve is great. By all means, go to Christmas Eve, but don't do it and then skip Christmas Day. Come to Christmas Day.
Yeah.
It's where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
You betcha.
That's so funny.
So anyway, I mean, in terms of church chatter and trying to think about what's going on, that's what's going on at Sam Prairie. That's what's happening. That's what's going on.
Yeah.
So what's going on in your neck of the woods? Anything?
Well, I mean, we're pretty much in the same place where, Advent's going to start here in a few weeks.
Yeah.
I've been planning out Christmas music for a while, and now I looked at my schedule and it's, 2 more weeks and then it's Christmas, and I still feel like I don't have nearly as much ready as I should. So I'm sort of frantically now.
Yeah.
I got to get all these, I got to figure out all these Christmas songs and figure out where we're putting stuff.
Yeah.
All the things that we're technically supposed to do versus all the things we're going to do.
Oh, yeah. I gotcha. We talked about that last time.
Yeah, we did. So, so we're just in that mode now, getting ready for Christmas and figuring out all our Christmas Eve service and Christmas Day service. So figuring out what we're going to do for Advent. So,
well, right on then.
Yeah. So it'll be fun. We're excited. We're supposed to do a Christmas program. I didn't know this, but the VBS programs that you can purchase through, I think, Concordia, and I can't remember the other group, the other one. Some of them have corresponding Christmas programs.
Yeah.
So we're doing one of those.
So CPH with their Advent series actually has a Christmas program attached to it.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and I believe we're going to be using a version of that. We're going to kind of make it our own, but yeah.
Yeah. So get ready for that.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
All right. Well, it sounds like everybody's got stuff going on. It's that time of year. It's that time of year.
It's crazy.
So
We watched our first Hallmark Christmas movie last night.
oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So I'm very excited.
You know, you dropped that bomb on me right at the end.
Right at the end, I know. We should probably discuss it next time.
We're gonna pause on that one. We're coming back to that one next week.
Okay, sounds good.
We're coming back next week to Hallmark.
Hallmark.
All right. Well, that's all I have.
Me too.
All right. Well, everybody, thanks you for listening. Thanks for listening. God's blessings. Bye.
Bye.